Today we're exploring the 10 darkest secrets of U.S. presidents. These aren't conspiracy theories or tabloid rumors. They're drawn from declassified documents, DNA evidence, court records, personal letters, and accounts from the National Archives, Mount Vernon, Monticello, and respected historians. Some expose hypocrisy, others cruelty, and a few highlight how close the nation came to crisis. Prepare to see familiar names in a new light. Let's dive in. Starting with our very first president, George Washington, the myth of his wooden teeth has long been corrected. His dentures were made from materials such as ivory, animal bone, metal, and reportedly even human teeth. Financial records from his plantation show payments connected to teeth purchased from enslaved individuals at Mount Vernon. In May 1784, his ledger records a payment for 9 teeth through his French dentist, Jean-Pierre Le Meilleur. Historians confirm the transaction appears in plantation records and Washington's accounts. Although details remain debated, the payment reflects his direct involvement in slavery's economy. Washington owned hundreds of enslaved people, highlighting a lasting contradiction in his legacy as a symbol of liberty. Moving to Thomas Jefferson, the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, his famous words, "All men are created equal," shaped democratic ideals worldwide. Yet Jefferson enslaved hundreds of people at his estate, Monticello, and had a long relationship with Sally Hemings, an enslaved woman there. Historical evidence indicates that Hemings was the half-sister of Jefferson's late wife. She was a teenager when their relationship began, while living in Paris with Jefferson's family. In 1998, DNA testing published in Nature linked Eston Hemings, Sally's youngest son, to Jefferson's male family line, supporting long-standing claims. A 2000 research report at Monticello concluded Jefferson was likely the father of her children. He never publicly acknowledged them. Some were freed later in life, but the relationship remained hidden, highlighting a deep contradiction between his public ideals of liberty and his private involvement in slavery. Andrew Jackson, the 7th president, is often celebrated as the champion of the common man. But his Indian Removal Act of 1830 forced tens of thousands of Native Americans from their ancestral lands, leading to one of the greatest humanitarian tragedies in U.S. history, the Trail of Tears. Jackson ignored Supreme Court rulings like Worcester, Georgia, 1832, where Chief Justice John Marshall declared Georgia's laws over Cherokee lands unconstitutional. Jackson reportedly said, "John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it." The forced marches displaced about 60,000 people from the Cherokee, Choctaw, Creek, Chickasaw, and Seminole nations. Estimates of deaths range from 4,000 to over 6,000 Cherokee alone from disease, starvation, exposure, and brutal conditions, with total deaths across tribes reaching 13,000 to 16,000. Grover Cleveland's secret cancer surgery on a yacht. In 1893, during a severe economic depression, Grover Cleveland discovered a cancerous tumor, verrucous carcinoma, on the roof of his mouth, roughly the size of a quarter. Public knowledge could trigger panic and worsen the crisis, so Cleveland orchestrated one of the most secretive presidential medical procedures ever. On July 1, 1893, he boarded his friend Commodore Elias Benedict's yacht, the Oneida, claiming a fishing trip. Strapped to a chair under ether anesthesia, surgeons removed the tumor, 5 teeth, and much of his upper left jaw, all through the mouth to avoid external scars that might alert the press. A second operation followed days later. Cleveland's thick mustache hid any changes, and he returned to work as if nothing happened. Warren G. Harding's Affairs and Administration Scandals. Warren G. Harding entered office in 1921, promising stability after World War I, but his presidency became synonymous with scandal. Years after his death, Nan Britton published a 1927 book the president's daughter, claiming Harding had a long-term affair with her and fathered her child. For decades, her story was dismissed, but DNA testing in 2015 confirmed Harding was indeed the child's father. Britain also alleged that some encounters occurred in a White House closet, a sensational claim that historians cannot conclusively verify, though the affair itself is now widely accepted. Harding's personal life raised concerns about vulnerability to blackmail, as evidence shows he had multiple extramarital relationships. At the same time, his administration was engulfed in corruption, most notably the Teapot Dome scandal, in which Interior Secretary Albert B. Fall secretly leased federal oil reserves to private companies in exchange for bribes, later becoming the first cabinet member imprisoned for crimes in office. In 1923, as investigations intensified, Harding suddenly died during a national tour. No autopsy was performed, fueling speculation, and he never faced the full political consequences of the scandals surrounding his presidency. Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066 in 1942 during World War II, authorizing the forced relocation and incarceration of more than 120,000 Japanese Americans. Most of those affected were U.S. citizens living on the West Coast. The government argued the action was necessary for national security after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Families were given little time to leave their homes and were sent to remote internment camps surrounded by barbed wire. Decades later, the U.S. government formally apologized and provided reparations to survivors, acknowledging that the policy was driven by wartime fear, prejudice, and civil liberties violations. Richard Nixon's secret Cambodia bombings. Richard Nixon expanded the Vietnam War in ways many Americans did not initially know. In 1969, his administration secretly authorized a massive bombing campaign in Cambodia, a neutral country at the time. The operation, known as Operation Menu, targeted North Vietnamese supply routes and bases along the Cambodian border. What made it especially controversial was the secrecy. The bombings were concealed not only from the public, but also from much of Congress. Official military records were altered to hide the true locations of the strikes. When news of the campaign became public in 1970, it triggered widespread protests across the United States, intensifying anti-war sentiment. Critics argued the expansion destabilized Cambodia and contributed to the rise of the Khmer Rouge. Supporters claimed it was a necessary military strategy to pressure North Vietnam. The revelation deepened mistrust in government and added to the growing credibility gap that would later explode during the Watergate scandal. Ronald Reagan and Iran-Contra. Ronald Reagan faced one of the biggest scandals of the 1980s, the Iran-Contra affair. Senior officials in his administration secretly sold weapons to Iran, despite an official U.S. arms embargo. The goal was partly to secure the release of American hostages in Lebanon. Profits from those arms sales were then secretly funneled to support the Contras, anti-communist rebels fighting Nicaragua's government, even though Congress had banned such funding. When the operation was exposed in 1986, it caused national outrage. Investigations revealed a deliberate effort to bypass congressional authority. Several officials were convicted, though some convictions were later overturned or pardoned. Reagan denied direct knowledge of the fund diversion, but accepted responsibility, and the scandal raised serious concerns about executive power and government accountability. Bill Clinton's Lewinsky scandal and impeachment. Bill Clinton became the center of a major national controversy in the late 1990s, known as the Lewinsky scandal. The issue began when it was revealed that Clinton had an inappropriate relationship with White House intern Monica Lewinsky. At first, Clinton publicly denied the relationship, including during sworn testimony. However, evidence later confirmed the affair, leading to accusations of perjury and obstruction of justice. In 1998, The U.S. House of Representatives voted to impeach him on those charges, making him only the second president in American history to be impeached. The Senate conducted a trial in 1999 and ultimately acquitted him, allowing him to remain in office and complete his second term. The scandal dominated media coverage for months, deeply divided public opinion, and sparked intense debate about morality, leadership, and presidential accountability. It remains one of the most significant political scandals in modern U.S. history. Woodrow Wilson's stroke and 17-month cover-up. Woodrow Wilson suffered a severe stroke in October 1919 while serving in office. The stroke left him partially paralyzed and significantly weakened, limiting his ability to perform presidential duties. For the remaining 17 months of his term, his condition was kept largely private from the public. His wife, Edith Wilson, played an unusually influential role, helping to manage access to the president and decide which matters reached him. Many historians debate the extent of this arrangement, but it is widely agreed that Wilson's health was concealed to some degree. The situation raised serious questions about transparency, presidential succession, and how the United States should handle leadership during a president's incapacity. These 10 secrets show that power doesn't erase human flaws, it often amplifies them. Our presidents shaped the nation we live in today, but their shadows remind us to question, learn, and hold leadership accountable. Thanks for joining me on the timeline. History isn't always pretty, but it's always worth knowing. See you soon.